Summer 1943. After months of desperate fighting on the Eastern Front, two Titanic armies were poised for a collision of unprecedented scale. These forces numbered over 2 million men, equipped with 6,000 tanks and 4,000 aircraft, ready for a monumental clash. The ground would shake, not from natural disaster, but from the synchronized roar of thousands of engines. This was accompanied by the thunder of artillery, signaling an immense and brutal confrontation. This was the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in history, a clash of immense proportions. It would irrevocably decide the fate of the Eastern Front, and by extension, the entire Second World War. Why, after Stalingrad's devastating defeat just 5 months prior, did the Wehrmacht gamble everything on another massive offensive? And how did the Red Army, seemingly on the brink of collapse in 1941, withstand this colossal assault? They not only withstood it, but decisively turned the strategic tide of the entire war. To understand this monumental confrontation, we must first look at Eastern Europe's strategic chessboard in grim 1943. A vast, menacing bulge in the Soviet lines presented both a dangerous temptation and a deadly trap. Following the German defeat at Stalingrad and Soviet winter offensives, the front lines stabilized, but not before creating a massive salient around Kursk, extending 150 kilometers into German-held territory. This Kursk salient was a geographical anomaly, a strategic target ripe for encirclement by German forces. Hitler, still believing a decisive Eastern victory possible, saw this as a chance to regain initiative. The German plan, codenamed Operation Citadel, aimed to sever the salient's base, encircle and destroy two Soviet fronts within. This operation aimed to inflict a crushing blow, crippling the Red Army on the Eastern Front for good. Crucially, the offensive was delayed repeatedly to allow deployment of new, heavily armored German fighting vehicles. These included the formidable Tiger I heavy tank and the experimental Panther medium tank. Also deployed was the fearsome Elephant heavy tank destroyer. Promising a decisive technological edge, however, the Soviets possessed a critical advantage: intelligence, gleaned through the Lucy spy ring and other sources. The Stavka, Soviet High Command, knew the German plans, including their objectives and approximate timing. Rather than meet the offensive head-on, Zhukov and Vasilevsky orchestrated a strategic defense. This defense, along with key front commanders, was planned with unprecedented depth and scale. Over for months, the Red Army constructed a vast network of defensive lines, up to 300 kilometers deep. These included 7 to 8 main defensive belts, featuring dense minefields of devastating effectiveness. An estimated 400,000 anti-tank and 500,000 anti-personnel mines were laid across the front. Elaborate anti-tank ditches, extensive artillery positions, fortified trenches, and vast wire obstacles reinforced these lines. Behind these primary defenses, powerful strategic reserves, like the 5th Guards Tank Army, were held ready. They were poised for counterattack, aiming to exhaust German armored spearheads against formidable barriers. The goal was maximum attrition, inflicting heavy losses before launching their own decisive counteroffensive. On the German side, Field Marshal von Kluge commanded Army Group Center in the north. Field Marshal von Manstein led Army Group South in the south, orchestrating their part of the plan. Their strategy was a classic pincer movement, relying on Panzer Division's speed and destructive power. The aim was to break through and encircle the Soviet forces within the Kursk salient. General Walter Model's 9th Army formed the northern pincer, targeting General Rokossovsky's Central Front. General Hermann Hoff's 4th Panzer Army and General Werner Kempf's Army Detachment formed the southern pincer. They confronted General Nikolai Vatutin's Voronezh Front in a critical part of the attack. For the Soviets, General Rokossovsky oversaw the Central Front's defense, a crucial responsibility. General Vatutin commanded the Voronezh Front, preparing his troops for the impending assault. Marshal Ivan Konov commanded the Steppe Front, held as a massive strategic reserve force. It was to be deployed only after the German offensive had been effectively blunted. Their strategy was revolutionary, an active defense, designed to inflict maximum damage. They would absorb the initial shock, bleed the German panzers dry, exhausting their forces, Then, they would unleash their own armored might in a series of powerful counterblows. The battle commenced on July 5, 1943, after a massive Soviet preemptive artillery bombardment. This barrage, based on defector intelligence, aimed to disrupt German troop concentrations and launch preparations. It caused significant disorganization among the German forces but did not prevent their attack. In the northern sector, General Model's 9th Army, with formidable Tiger I tanks, crashed into Rokossovsky's central front. The German forces immediately faced crushing resistance from the prepared Soviet defenses. Their new Panther tanks, rushed into service, suffered severe mechanical breakdowns, hindering progress. Soviet minefields, sometimes 10 kilometers deep, proved devastatingly effective, trapping numerous tanks. Artillery and anti-tank gunners then destroyed these trapped vehicles, inflicting heavy, irreplaceable losses. Pitched battles raged around the villages of Ponyry and Olkovatka, highlighting the fierce struggle. Despite desperate German efforts, committing almost all their armored reserves, the northern offensive bogged down. After only a few days, they had advanced barely 10 to 15 kilometers, a clear strategic failure. The southern sector saw more initial success for Field Marshal Manstein's Army Group South. General Hoth's 4th Panzer Army, with its elite 2 SS Panzer Corps, made deeper penetrations. Powerful Tiger I units spearheaded the assault against Vatutin's Voronezh front. Pushing forward, they bypassed strong points and exploited weaknesses, advancing up to 35 kilometers in some areas. Their ultimate objective was the crucial railway hub of Prokhorovka, a vital strategic point. It was near Prokhorovka, on July 12, 1943, that the largest direct tank-on-tank engagement took place. Elements of the 2 SS Panzer Corps clashed head-on with General Rotmistrov's Soviet 5th Guards tank army. Thousands of tanks and self-propelled guns engaged in a brutal, close-quarters melee across open fields. The battle was a maelstrom of steel, fire, and explosions, showcasing the intense combat. Both sides suffered horrific losses, with hundreds of tanks destroyed or severely damaged. Often portrayed as a decisive Soviet victory, Prokhorovka was a bloody, costly tactical draw. Crucially, it effectively halted the German advance in the south, ending their offensive momentum. On July 13th, facing the Allied invasion of Sicily and irreplaceable losses at Kursk, Hitler acted. Adolf Hitler reluctantly ordered the cancellation of Operation Citadel, recognizing its failure. He withdrew forces for redeployment to the Mediterranean, sealing the fate of the German offensive. The Soviets quickly transitioned from defense to offense, seizing the strategic initiative. On July 12th, Western and Bryansk fronts launched Operation Kutuzov against the German 9th Army. This northern offensive liberated Oryol by August 5th, pushing back the Wehrmacht significantly. In the south, on August 3rd, Voronezh and Steppe fronts launched Operation Polkovodets-Rumyantsev. They pushed back Army Group South, liberating Belgorod by August 5th and Kharkov by August 23rd. The Kursk salient was not only cleared, but the Red Army advanced hundreds of kilometers further west. The Battle of Kursk was a catastrophic defeat for Germany and a monumental victory for the Soviet Union. The Wehrmacht suffered irreplaceable losses in men, tanks, and aircraft, permanently shattering its offensive capabilities. The myth of German military invincibility in summer campaigns was decisively broken at Kursk. For the first time, Germany lost a major offensive to the Red Army, initiating the attack. This was despite using superior numbers of their latest equipment, a significant strategic failure. Strategically, Kursk marked the last major German offensive on the Eastern Front, ending their initiative. From this point forward, the initiative belonged irrevocably to the Red Army, dictating the war's pace. German forces were forced onto the defensive, beginning a long, bloody retreat that would end in Berlin. The battle bought crucial time for the Western Allies and fundamentally altered the balance of power. It paved the way for subsequent Soviet offensives and ultimately the end of the Second World War. Kursk underscored the immense value of strategic intelligence and deep defensive planning by the Soviets. It also highlighted the Soviet Union's industrial capacity to absorb and recover from staggering blows. Even advanced weaponry like Tiger and Panther tanks proved ineffective without overwhelming numerical superiority. They struggled against meticulously prepared, multi-layered defenses built with immense effort. The battle was a testament to the resilience and sacrifice of millions of Soviet soldiers and civilians. Through sheer determination and unparalleled suffering, they turned the tide of the greatest land war in history. The sacrifices made at Kursk reverberated through the rest of the war, shaping its final outcome. It also profoundly influenced the geopolitical landscape for decades after the global conflict. But what other hidden battles or strategic decisions do you believe truly turned the tide of World War II? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives.